The Royal Navy came to Dover on the evening of Tuesday, July the 20th, 2010, to give a presentation to about 70 invited figures, including the Mayoress of Dover, in Dover Town Hall. The presentation was on the role of the Navy, past, present and future. Dover has, of course, a long and distinguished connection with the Navy, not least as the port from which the famous Dover Patrol set out during World War I, and as the HQ for the operation to evacuate the British Expeditionary Force from the beaches of Dunkirk in World War II. The interview which follows is with the leader of the Royal Navy's presentation team, Commander Jason Scott. It seems that, due to forthcoming spending cuts, the show which he presented is one of the last few such presentations to be made. Commander Scott's next posting will be as Deputy Commander of HMS Illustrious, one of the Navy's 2 aircraft carriers.
To continue to engage in these sorts of counterinsurgency campaigns, and of course there's much else that goes on around the world. There's a great deal of security related issues that take place on the high seas. The government's already said that it sees countering piracy as a priority that just sits below the operations in Afghanistan, and we need to look at wider problems and what might face this country for the future. So it's great that the Navy is engaged in that, as all of defence is. I think the Navy punches above its weight. We are only 35,000 strong. The Army is much, much larger, 102,000 strong, and it's not just the Army, of course, that operates in Afghanistan, even though it's a landlocked country. Right now, there are 900 people from the Royal Navy in Afghanistan. 10% of all British forces now today come from the Royal Navy, and that's not just Marines, it's doctors, it's medics in the round, it's logisticians, it's bomb disposal people, it's pilots. There's a whole raft of capability out there drawn from the Royal Navy, and coming next year we'll have the remainder of 3 Commando Brigade going out, and 2009, many listeners may not be aware that 60% of all British forces in Afghanistan in the early part of 2009 came from the Royal Navy. We're not saying we do it all, we're saying we do our part in it. For the future, well, what does the future hold? The future is likely to hold something that is economical. We must realise that. It's something that looks after the UK's responsibilities overseas. 10 million British nationals live outside of the UK. We have a plethora of overseas and dependent territories who we are morally and legally obliged to look after, and all of those areas need a Royal Navy to be agile, adaptable, and capable to affect their security.
I mean, you're reminding me that over the decades there have been many instances when the Navy has been called in to evacuate our own nationals and other nationals from hotspots, or from sometimes when there are disasters like volcanic eruptions or hurricanes, whatever. And also the Navy's done a wonderful job very often. A single Navy frigate, it always amazes me, can do such incredible work on an island, repairing damage, hurricane damage, and that sort of thing. Yeah,
you're right, and thank you again. I mean, this really is what the Navy delivers. It's strategic choice. It offers the government strategic choice. On the 19th of February, for example, Gordon Brown was able to stand up on the international stage and say to the international community that the United Kingdom cares enough to send the Royal Fleet Auxiliary Largs Bay to Haiti to provide relief there. In the presentation we talk about the evacuation of thousands of vulnerable people from the Lebanon without the need to send in troops, and thereby we managed to avoid both political and military entanglement. So offering the government this sort of strategic choice, the Navy just has to be there to exist, and the government can send it where it chooses. It's one of those, it is inherently a strategic asset.
Right, and also on just one further word on operations, something that I'm reminded of is the very important role that the Navy plays in the Caribbean, combating drug running, which is a major problem, and I believe you sort of do shared operations with the US and possibly other countries there.
Very much so. We're closely involved and have been for some time with the Americans in the Caribbean to stop the flow of cocaine in particular, both into the US and British overseas dependent territories, and increasingly over into the European Union. We operate under a multilateral arrangement with 7 European Union partner nations in the Maritime Analysis and Operations Centre Narcotics down in Lisbon, which is currently chaired by a British national from the Serious Organised Crime Agency. Operating on joint intelligence, British ships have engaged on several occasions successfully in intercepting cocaine at sea and allowing perpetrators to be prosecuted in Spanish and Portuguese courts. So that's an example again of the Navy providing strategic linkages between on a multinational and bilateral arrangements. It's what we've always done ever since Nelson. We'll continue to do it.
That sounds marvellous and very well organised, and it's good to see that the Navy has such great cooperation with these partners. One thing that slightly worries me is, will you have enough ships to do all these jobs?
Well, again, that brings us neatly back round to the Defence Review and asking the question, what is required of defence? Where might defence be required to operate? That first order question will then reveal the sorts of force structures and ships that we need to deliver those tasks and those effects. And so we're very hopeful that the Defence Review, which will turn out its results by Christmas, will shed some light on that matter and allow us to be appropriately resourced.
Thank you. And lastly, one last question for you, Commander. For any young person who might be attending the presentation tonight, or who passes his local Navy recruiting offices, what would you have to say to them as regards a career in the Navy of tomorrow?
Do it. I've loved it. It's been fantastic for me. I've seen plenty of the world. I've done some things that are really positive. Being involved in Sierra Leone in the first Gulf War, involved on a daily basis in making things better, which is a really good thing. It gives you a really good feeling about being useful, and I strongly believe that the Navy has a future. It's got a key part to play in protecting the safety and the security of the citizen in the aftermath of the Defence Review as a strategic and deployable and adaptable organisation.
Commander Jason Scott, thank you very much indeed for your time.
My pleasure.